Hello and welcome to the Property Edge podcast. My name's Rob Turnbull. Join me on a journey of discovery as we discover the tools, the technology, the platforms, the data, the AI that are powering today's real estate and property leaders and giving them the edge. And this information will also guide our Property Edge workflow in the future to understand what else we can put into Property Edge to give you, the user, more capabilities. And today I'm joined with someone who will have a really different perspective on this. As the president of the Real Estate Institute of South Australia, Cain Cooke has done a lot for the industry over the last few years, but he's not even involved directly in a real estate agency anymore. Good morning, Cain. Thanks for joining.
Good morning, Rob. Thanks for having me on.
It's been about 15 years since you were with Century 21. What have you been doing with yourself since then?
I've done a lot of different things in the last 15 years. I went and ran a little juice bar that everybody might be familiar with called Boost Juice. I was part of the team that brought Specsavers to Australia. I've ran a South Australian coffee chain, Chibo, ran an IT company. And in the last couple of years, I've launched a couple of my own ventures, one being an electric motorcycle company, which I guess is very much in the technology space, and a tiny homes business as well. So I've kind of traversed a number of industries since leaving the gold jacket behind, gold being a loose word, I think, around the colour of that. But it certainly gives me a really interesting vantage point from which to think about not only the real estate industry, but I guess business in general.
And so as the REISA president, you're always keeping connected with the industry, obviously, and you'd have some solid relationships and you're operating almost daily in that industry. But, as I always harp on about, the technology is great, but if you haven't got the execution there, that technology doesn't matter whatsoever. So sometimes rather than upgrading technology, it's important to upgrade people and help them understand that. How have you seen that since you stepped away from the industry? How have you seen technology change things?
In many, many ways, and then in no ways at all. I'm old enough to remember when I started in the industry, we used to still take a camera, and digital cameras were becoming a thing. And we'd take photos and then print them out and stick them on a window card. That's when I started the industry. Or when the advertiser went from black and white sketches to colour, which at the time was, a revelation. I think the industry, and from a technology perspective, we're still doing a lot of the same processes that we were doing before. We've just removed a lot of the manual component. So there's obviously a lot of automation, and that allows property managers, salespeople to do volume. I think that's the real shift that I've seen, is the ability to work faster, to sell more homes, to lease more homes, to manage more homes. That's the real observation that I've seen. Is 20 years ago when I got in, some of the sort of volume of transactions that we're seeing people do, we never would have dreamed of at that time. And that's all because they've got a supportive ecosystem around them, and it allows great salespeople in particular to really hone in on what they're great at. And fundamentally, this is a people business. So when you have great people listing and selling property, and they're not having to worry about triplicate pads to sign a contract, they can actually have technology to facilitate that process, that they've got prompters around the relationships or things that are important to people that are on their database. They can really lean into, in my view, what are the two most critical parts of any real estate transaction, whether that be on PM or sales, and that's human, so building those relationships, and then also having the space and intelligence through systems, data and insight to negotiate the best outcome for their vendor or their landlord. And at the end of the day, that's the job.
And you see that throughout, right? So you see technology coming in and allowing humans to be better at the best things that they can do that technology can't do for them. And then technology takes away all the painful stuff and also serves up a lot of information to them in the form of data and data points that previously couldn't be collected or very, very dispersely connected. Serve them up right there and then in a timely manner for people to make decisions. In that space then, in that serving up data space, what are you seeing the top 10% agencies, what are they arming their teams with that perhaps other agencies should perhaps consider or look into?
From my perspective, I think it's actually about the interpretation of data. So, if we consider that great real estate agent their knowledge of the market and the market dynamics. Now, 20 years ago, we used to get that from hitting the phone and talking to our peers, or we'd see an under contract sticker go up on a property and we'd call, what did you get for it? What's it look like? So that we could get those market insights. Those market insights are now available through things like Property Edge, which is a great product, but whether that be through CoreLogic or a competitive product as well. I think what the great agencies do and great agents is actually use that data and interpret it in real terms. So it's all well and good for us to know that 8 Smith Street sold for $2.2 million. But what does that actually mean? How did that sell for $2.2 million? What was the marketing campaign that went behind it? What did the buyer profile look like? What sort of conditions were set around that contract? Why did 8 Smith Street sell for 2.2, but 2 months ago, 7 Smith Street sold for 1.8? What's the difference on that side of the street to the other? So I think what's really important is how you interpret that information. And we do have a tendency to get quite transactional about it. So we say, oh, this sold for this sold for that. So that means blah. And your home also has 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and is on a similar size block. So it must mean this. But actually, in truth, understanding how that home is used, who lived in it, what improvements have been made, its proximity to services, school zones. That's how you, one, can win more business, but two, squeeze more money out of your buyers. So I think the trap with data is we're more informed than ever, but what the top guys are doing is utilizing that information for interpretation. Again, to probably go back to the first point of humanising it and making it something really tangible for people who primarily are buying with their hearts, not their heads, to get a better outcome for your vendor. And that means, what's life going to be like living here? What does it mean if I choose this street versus 2 streets over? What does it mean to be in this school catchment versus that school catchment? We know these things now. We don't have to hit the phone, but what do they actually mean when I'm living my life in this place?
I love that point there. How would an agency owner or principal then help their younger or their newer agents get that perspective, understand the depth of that? How would they mentor them through that?
I think the great agencies are doing this by bringing their recruits up through working underneath experienced agents. I always used to butt up against this. I was a young guy in Century 21, and we had very, very experienced agents at the time in the early 2000s. And I thought that I knew better because I was young, I was enthusiastic, I wanted to change the game. But what really helped, and we're seeing this happen in really formal structures now, is where you have the ability to slide underneath the arm of somebody who's been practicing for 10, 15, 20 years and really honed their craft. So I think while the temptation for new entrants to the industry is to go, all right, I can go and get subscription to data, I've got my form set, I've got my CRM, I've got a great network and I know how to tap into that, I can go and make money. Sitting in a lounge room with somebody who has had these sorts of conversations with vendors time in, time out, or purchasers to get a deal done, and really understanding the nuance of the craft. It is a nuanced craft dealing with people. I think the temptation often is to go, oh, well, I'm going to go and work in a big, great agency because I want to steal all their systems or understand how, efficient they are. It's not that. It's the craft. It's knowing when to pause, what to say at the right time, how to read the emotions of a human being and then position things in the right way to get the deal done in the right way. That's the power. And I think the really great agencies are offering that through team structures, through being able to work under elite agents. You might be 2 or 3 of you as a team and really hone your craft before you stand up yourself and potentially your own team and pay that forward. So it is much more structured in that way these days for those elite performers.
I love the term you use, humanising it, because that's really what it comes down to. It's a people game, isn't it? But if we skip away from people all of a sudden and let's go to the hot topic of the last couple of years, AI.
Yes.
I do remember some really interesting people talking at the recent REISA conference, actually, a couple of months ago about AI. And there was quite some other quite disturbing dystopian future where robots and AI are going to be calling all prospects, and then we'll be calling using AI and responding to AI. Where do you see this fitting at the moment? What are agencies doing to embrace it? And where do you think it'll go?
There's a lot of parts to that question, Rob. It's a good one. I think AI is a risk for our business if we don't think about it the right way. There is this view that in the future, I will have my AI version of Cain that will deal with an AI version of Rob, and it'll know everything that I know and probably be a much better version of me. It'll be Cain on a good day every day. And that I'll be able to instruct that AI as to who I want to engage with, how I want to engage with them, and what's important to me. So actually getting through to the human behind AI is going to be extraordinarily difficult. And for real estate agents, that becomes really challenging. And what we do generally in our industry is we're really good at adopting technology. We're fantastic at doing that early days. We love technology. We're looking for the edge. And there is an edge at the moment, and we are starting to see people use avatars of themselves to talk or to try and sell property. And I generally think that's dangerous. I think the people that are going to win this game are the ones that actually use AI not in the sense of replicating themselves, but in taking away the mundane tasks. So use AI to do all of the low-level tasks that aren't income generating to allow you to compile information, to pull reports together. I think we'll see it more and more start to assist us in completing contracts, Form 1, those sorts of things. And they'll probably do it much better than we can remove any errors. But the way we survive, again, is to go back to that human piece. It's be belly to belly, be toe to toe, have the conversations, make meaningful connections with people, show up and care, and then let the AI do all the stuff that doesn't require you to be an empathetic human. And I think the real estate agents that are going to win in this space are the ones that do that. Gone are the days where you could say, I'm a great real estate agent because I know how to fill in a Form 1 better than anybody else, and I'm meticulous with my paperwork. There will be a time where machines will do that for us. In fact, I think it's closer than we probably all realise. And the ones that will win again will be the ones that can turn up, can connect, can understand your motivation for buying or selling and produce a brilliant outcome, and then continue to personalise that relationship.
What you're saying there seems pretty true in how AI is being used at the moment, because it probably hasn't got to a point where we can confidently use it elsewhere. But once again, you're right. We talked earlier about your times at Century 21, where technology was just starting to develop. Perhaps we can compare the way that AI is operating now as in when we started getting spreadsheets and emails happening. It just made mundane tasks quicker and easier and gave us the opportunity to do more volume every day.
And I would say, I was there when we started doing, broadcast email alerts for Just Listed, and that was such a coup. But then we did that, and then the person down the road was doing that, and the other person, and then all of a sudden consumers were being, and this probably sounds really rudimentary for people that are listening to this, that, are using really sophisticated tools, but this was a thing, we could upload a photo to the internet, and then we could email people a Just Listed. It was, cutting edge stuff in 2002, whatever it was. But what happened very rapidly is that everybody was doing it, and we were spamming people. So people were absolutely being hammered. Then what happened is people started to think about how you create value. So the people who could take that technological leap and go, how do I take what is being used currently as just a kind of, I think you'll like this house, here it is in your inbox. But instead go, I understand you, I understand your motivations for buying, I understand that you want unique insights about the marketplace or what's happening in your local area, and creating value for those people that I was communicating with. They started to win the race rather than those that were just uniformly bombarding. And I think that's probably going to be the same thing with, any emerging technology is if we put ourselves, and I'm probably going to be a bit controversial here, but many people in the industry that have heard me talk, I talk about this all the time. Prop tech has made agency practice really efficient. Most of it is aimed at us as practitioners and making our businesses more efficient so that we can create more money. Very little of it is focused at the consumer. And actually, in a lot of cases, when we adopt some of this technology, it requires the consumer to do more. So it requires them to input data for us to make our life easier. I think the agencies who are starting to lean in and go, how do I create value for the buyer or the seller, the landlord or the tenant, rather than just efficiencies for me? And don't get me wrong, efficiencies are very important in businesses, how we do make money and we keep things moving. But if we put the lens of we are here to serve the end user and technology should do that, how do I create value for them so that they choose me versus how I've created value for myself within my business by adopting all these technologies? That's something I'm really passionate about. And I don't think we're quite there yet. But as we do that, and the people that are able to do that, they're going to win big time because consumers will flock to them.
I love how you flipped that there, right? You've talked about technology. Let's get away from what technology can do behind the scenes in our business, to how technology adds value, and it's really important. And your perspective there that first movers will get that first jump is really a valid one. And so on that, the first movers tend to be the ones that are more agile. They tend to be the ones that are more connected. Potentially, they tend to be medium to large in this space because they actually have the capability to take a step back. They might have teams that can do this. Do you have any recommendations or any ideas for smaller agencies and agents who might want to get on this and try and understand how they can add value to their customer using tech, given they've got their day job, which is, being a real estate agent?
Yeah. Oh, look, I think it doesn't have to be complicated. So if we think about things like we live in a world of social media now, and a lot of these AI tools are now integrated into Instagram, into Facebook. Meta's got them sitting there. So that allows you to understand better. You can use things like ChatGPT to help you create content in a really tangible way. You've got to do it sensibly. These tools are universal. They're not things that require you to be turning over $50 million or $100 million and have a team of developers. There's definitely businesses out there that are doing that, and they're going to play with these tools and do some things. But if you're a smaller practice or you're just starting out, there's actually a myriad of tools that you can access within things that you're using every day. I think most of us, even me these days, I spend a lot more time on Instagram than I probably should. But those tools are actually embedded in there to help you find customers, to generate content, and you don't have to pay for them. That they already exist. So don't be afraid of leaning into applications that you're already using. You're probably using Office 365 suite, most of us do, to do our business. That's got AI integrated into it that can help you write things faster. It can help you proof. So these are little things, I suppose, but they're all about creating those efficiencies for yourself. And I would always kind of recommend to people, something that I get talked a lot about is AI chatbots. All the time people raise this because I think when we're in real estate, we get conversation fatigue. We spend our days on the phone and talking to people. And if you're not doing that, you're not doing real estate. That's the job. But we do always kind of look for these shortcuts. I use an AI chatbot that will kind of sound like me or will give people the answers so that I don't have to talk to them. That comes up a lot. They're okay in a real transactional sense. I think if you're trying to buy an item online or in retail, I've worked in retail, they kind of work. They've been around for a while in a certain sense. But when you're talking about selling your largest asset or making your largest investment, you want to deal with a human being and you want to deal with somebody that you can trust. So make sure that even though we do get conversation fatigue, and that's a real thing, don't rely on technology to fill a gap that is the way you win business is actually is human to human connection and trust.
I love how this theme throughout this conversation today has been humanizing things.
Yes.
And I think it's quite valid because we do get caught up a lot in platforms and technology and how we can do things. End of the day, it's the person that has to go out there, make the phone call, go and close a property, right? So that's pretty valid. Just one final thing. What's your view on agency groups and their role in helping their smaller agency members lift up in their tech space?
I actually probably see it in the same way that we think about it at the Real Estate Institute of South Australia. So we think that our job is not to tell you what to do. And I think marketing and brand groups are kind of getting in that space too. And that is about helping you find the best system or structure for you. So there are some, prolific systems and platforms that are being used. I think if I talk about Property Me, everyone knows Property Me. There's lots of people using that. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily right for you, for your size of business, for the way you want to deliver your experience. In a lot of cases, it is, right? It's, not taking anything away from it. But when I think about brand groups, when I think about REISA, our job is to help. When you consider there's thousands and thousands of prop techs and systems out there, our job is to help you make the decision about what you use and what's best for you more rapidly, because you can get lost very quickly, and there is no one size fits all system that does all of the things. You need to use multiple systems and pull them together, and helping you understand where your data lives, where the developers are, how these people are going to support you if things go wrong. Is it secure? Where's the value that you can extract from it? What parts of the system are you going to use? Who's a trusted vendor versus, who's experimental? I think they're the jobs that we have. Real estate agents should be great at real estate, not at technology. There's amazing people out there who are really good at this stuff, and you need to lean into them. So if I think about the way that I see real estate practitioners and the way we win the game, it's about becoming a trusted advisor. So in the same way that we have an accountant, a lawyer, we might have a financial advisor, there are trusted ecosystem of people. And we should always have a real estate agent. I genuinely believe that. But you also need somebody in technology who's a trusted advisor. And brand groups can do that. There's obviously lots of external independent people as well that can do that. You can look to your institute, or even quite often I find some of the bigger brands are also really happy to share what they're doing. Maybe that's a very Adelaide thing too, but in South Australia, I think we're always very happy to share, to say, oh, look, we're trying this, or we use this system and it's great, or yeah, don't touch that one because it's a bit of a disaster zone. So I think don't feel like you need to be an expert in technology. I ran a technology business and I'm not an expert in technology, but I was surrounded by people that were, and I asked them questions and they gave me great advice. The role of brand is to provide good structure, good advisory, in some cases, great systems. And when I was at Century 21, we had eSales, which was a web-based CRM, which was kind of this revolutionary thing at the time. That's just the way the world works now, right? Wind the clock forward 20 years, we've all got them. And that's the challenge, is keeping up. But what I would say in that context too is that our ability to be agile and not getting bogged down in systems is also really important, because the space is dynamic. There's something new coming around the corner all the time. I went to London Tech Week in June, and there I found these guys from New Zealand called Apply ID that do anti-money laundering check and ID verification. I was like, oh, that's great. We can plug that in. But my mindset went, yeah, we can plug that in. Not, I'm going to go and wed myself to these guys. Go, how does this fit into existing ecosystems that solves the problem? So how do we extract as much value as we can? And those guys will probably kill me for saying this, but how do we extract the value now that's available by them being leading edge, integrate it into our systems ahead of changes in things like anti-money laundering, which we're expecting this year, but position it in a way that if something better comes along or things change or expectations change, that we can adopt the next best. The system that we were using 15 years ago is not the system that anybody is using today. Don't expect that the system that you're using today is the system that you're going to be using in 5 or 10 years' time.
I think the real good insight there is the plug it in thing. I do this a lot at work. The plug it in. We just plug it in because data's easy to plug in. It really isn't, apparently.
Yeah.
But
there's people that can do that for you.
That's right. Yeah. You don't get an expert. But I guess that's what you want, isn't it, from these systems? You want to have this plug and play ability, but then you'd also have the unplug ability and to plug something else in. I think, so if I'm going to take two things away to the Property Edge team at Land Services from our conversation today, Cain,
Hmm.
One, it's going to be that ability to jump in and jump out, that plug thing that you just talked about there, because I think that's valid. And the other one is humanizing data. We've made Property Edge to be this platform where it's really easy to access loads of data, really, really good and pertinent data, unique and trustworthy data. But how do we then take it as a level up in the pyramid? How do we make it more digestible for people to take away and use in their own day-to-day offering? So I appreciate what you've done there with those insights. And let me thank you there for joining me today.
Absolute pleasure, Rob. Thanks for having me on.
That's been some really interesting perspectives. I hope the listeners at home have received something that they can take away into their own business. Certainly we will be at Property Edge. And do remember, subscribe to this podcast if you've got value today. Head over to propertyedge.app if you'd like more information about what we do and also to sign up for our monthly newsletter. Until the next time, bye-bye.